Hello and welcome to this month's edition of the SINGTalks Lounge. The Talk Lounge comes your way every third Tuesday of the month. The Talk Lounge is a forum where we discuss critical issues that are of utmost importance to our political, developmental, and social well-being as Nigerians. This month's edition is reaching you live from the head office of the SING Foundation here in Abuja. The SING Foundation is a non-governmental and non-partisan organization working to promote good governance, environmental stability, and youth involvement in the United States of Nigeria. The Talk Lounge is brought your way every month by the SING Foundation and its partner. Now, prior to the 2019 general elections, SING Foundation pioneered a Vote a Must campaign to mobilize voters' turnouts and discourage violence and other malpractices during the elections. The organization also deployed young people as election observers to monitor the elections in the Niger Delta states of Rivers, Bayelsa, Edo, and Akwa Ibom. The 2019 general elections in Nigeria was marred by reported cases of violence and political killings. About 14 Nigerians' lives were lost to the elections across different geopolitical zones in the country. There were reports of disruption and malpractices in every region of the country. In states like Rivers, Bayelsa, Delta, for instance, there were reports of killings by thugs and even by security personnel, while in Akwa Ibom and Imo states, electoral officers were reportedly abducted. As reported by the Vanguard newspaper, in one of the incidents in Rivers State, 6 people were allegedly killed by security personnel. There were also incidences of security personnel invading resort collation centers and harassing election officers, which even resulted in the death of a party collation agent. The level of violence recorded during the presidential election instilled fears and apprehensions in the people, resulting in a high level of voter apathy during the gubernatorial elections. In today's conversation, we will be taking a look at the 2019 general elections in Nigeria and the level of violence recorded during the polls, with a view to profiling solutions on the way forward for future elections in the country as some states begin to prepare for their gubernatorial elections coming up later in the year. I have here with me 2 ladies and a gentleman. These are young Nigerians making efforts in their own way to bring about change in their community. To my immediate right, I have Mabel Ogirike. You're welcome. I'm glad to have you. To my immediate left, I have Comrade Okwanachi Jacob.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us today. And next to our comrade is Dr. Itari Tuna.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm glad you are here. Well, as is our new usual format in this program is a conversation, and we are all giving our opinions, our ideas on this issue. Now, looking at the 2019 general elections in Nigeria, the election has come and gone now, but not without its trail of the good, the bad, and the ugly. But now, generally, how will you rate the 2019 elections in Nigeria? Was it fair? Was it credible? Was it free, in your opinion? Let me start from you, Conway.
Well, I must say honestly that we have a little setback, and with the 2019 general election, it is viewed that we are taking aback from where we were to launch forward, which was the template laid by the 2015 elections. Most especially that we had the introduction of technology into elections in 2015, which was supposed to be a landmark achievement by the former INEC boss. But unfortunately, we see that most of those things were defied in this common election, the immediate past elections, where you have some places making use of that technology and other places not making use of it, creating a disparity and lack of uniformity in the process of dispensing elections.
Okay, Dr. Etari, will you want to agree with him, or what is your take about the credibility of the 2019 general elections in Nigeria?
Yeah, I totally agree with him, of course. There's a lot of disparity in terms of the results that were gotten. Sadly, violence was the order of the day when it came to elections. I was opportune to monitor elections during this electoral process, and we saw a lot of violence in that period. We even went on to visit some of the victims, that were affected by the process of the elections. For me, what was, sad was that people were okay with the fact that electoral processes comes with violence. So it is something that has now been normalized by our society, that we can never have elections without violence. And that doesn't happen outside Nigeria. It's only in Nigeria that elections are coming and people prepare for violence. Like what he talked about, the INEC and all the bodies that are supposed to make sure that elections are supposed to be free and fair. I cannot stand and say that they have done what they're supposed to.
We will come to that shortly. The role of the election monitoring bodies, we'll come to that shortly. Mabel, let me hear your take. What is your take about how will you rate the 2019 elections in Nigeria?
I would definitely say the elections wasn't free and fair. I would not try to rebuttress the point that I've already been stated. But one angle I would like to come from for this particular election, because it was really pivotal to our democracy as well. On this particular election, we saw a lot of young candidates, coming out, aspiring to different positions at state level, at the federal level, and it was really pivotal because it made a lot of people feel like our democracy was definitely going somewhere. It also increased voter appetite to actually vote. This year, a lot of young people actually made efforts to get their PVC. Even with the extension, a lot of people were still complaining that they needed to get their PVC and they needed their voices to be heard. So I feel this election brought a lot of sensitization to the entire voting scenario, where a lot of people wanted to get their voices heard, vote for the candidate that they felt was good. It's just a sad turnout of events that level of enthusiasm to participate in the election was met by violence, and that also made a lot of people regret. Even the rescheduling of the elections generally made a lot of people withdraw back from actually going to vote. Imagine going to the first round and they said we're not going to vote. Literally few hours to the election time. A lot of people went back, and then for the second round of voting, a lot of people were taken aback. They felt like, something else might happen. And they weren't wrong, because the violence took over, and then a lot of people, even after making the effort to go the second round, were not actually given the opportunity to vote in a lot of troubled areas like Rivers. So I'll definitely say it wasn't fair, definitely wasn't free. So.
Okay, thank you, Mabel. Let me come to you, Conway. Mabel just mentioned something while she was talking about the fact that the INEC, some few hours before the election to kick off, the presidential election was postponed. Now, do you see that in any way contributing to the violence we experienced, or you think it actually contributed to maybe reducing the amount of violence we would have experienced if the election had held on that particular day?
Well, the postponement is inconsequential to the process of the involvement of violence. Over time, Nigeria has viewed election as a balance of terror. Most especially that you see that from all angles, there's preparation towards violence as election approaches. And this is because they have made elections like a do-or-die affair. How do I mean? Most people want to be in power. Even if it is obvious that you're not going to take it, you still want to drag it onward. For example, what happened in Rivers State is an absolute attraction towards violence. When you see that a neophytic, a budding party, a party that was not known before, was just trying to rank up with an existing system, a government that had been in place for 4 years, and you get that heated competition. It goes far to say that, of course, there is an attempt to balance terror to get result out of elections, when ordinarily it's supposed to be a matter of the conscience of the people to vote from within, not from without, because people were about to be compelled to do the things they never had wanted to do.
Okay, Dr. Tai, let me take you on that. Election increasingly, year in, year out, prepare for elections. We talk about it's becoming a do-or-die affair, it's becoming a do-or-die affair. How do we begin to address these issues of having a do-or-die when it's time for, as you mentioned earlier on, as people are preparing for elections, it's like they're preparing for violence, preparing a strategy on how to inflict violence. How do we begin to address this issue where election is no longer seen as a do or die affair in this country?
I think it's a problem of systems. You know, it's the system that has been created for a very long time now. And we all know that youths are the vices that are being used to perpetrate electoral violence. And I think one of the things we have to look at is changing the mindset of the youth, because the youths contribute to over 60 to 70% of the population, and when it comes to election, the youth are the deciding factor, but they are not given the opportunity to vote. Rather, they are given the opportunity to commit electoral violence. So for me, what I would suggest is electoral education towards election shouldn't start 3 months before the election or 6 months before the election. You know, voters' education should start early, which is why we ran our Vote a Must campaign. You know, the idea of getting knowledge on what you should require from the candidates, because when we run elections in Nigeria, people don't know what the candidates have done. They don't track the candidates' record. They don't check anything about the candidates. It's all about the party. So we shouldn't be partisan. We should look for people who are credible and people who are ready to do the job. So if people know that this is what they deserve, then they would fight for it by saying, no, I'm not going to do this. Rather, I will use my PVC as my power.
Yes, you were an election observer during the last election,
Yes,
and so you were in the field. And she raised the point, the neighbor raised the point earlier on about we having more youth involvement in this electoral process. But from what you observe from the field, how was the turnout of the young people in terms of coming out to cast their votes?
Well, she also raised another good point, which is that the election was postponed. Unfortunately, after the postponement, a lot of people were scared that the tension towards violence would rise, because already there was a tension in the first place, but people had, especially youth, they had spent their money, they had traveled down to their hometowns hoping that they would be able to vote. I cannot per se generalize my own observation to the whole of Nigeria, because I only observed in Bayelsa State. And but the turnout wasn't what was expected. Nevertheless, even though the turnout wasn't what I expected it to be, the voting process was flawed. So we can't even, make our decisions or make our conclusions based on that. That's why I said it's a systematic problem. It's not a problem of individuals coming out to vote. It's a problem of solving the system, creating a more functional system that is favorable for everybody in terms of the fact that this is a democracy. Okay, what is a democracy? It should be the power of the people, by the people, and for the people. But if the people are not involved, and the people are rather used as vices against themselves, then the people need to be educated on how their problems will be solved. Because the people who are controlling, the population are just a set few of less than 1%. And they are the only ones that benefit at the end of the day. And these people, after we had the issue of voter, I witnessed voters buying and vote buying, and it was one of the most, organized form of vote buying I had ever seen. People actually were queuing to sell their votes.
Oh.
Yes. I didn't even know that was a queue to sell votes. It was one of our other observers that dragged my attention to it, that this queue is to sell votes. So if people can be that organized to sell their votes, then they can be organized to actually vote for the right person that they want. But the politicians know this, so they use it to their advantage.
That brings me to the role of security personnel during the elections. The Electoral Acts and even the Police Act and all of that clearly states the role of some of these security personnel during elections. And for instance, a police officer does not need a court warrant to arrest people that are committing violating electoral law during the elections. Now, this case you give, for example, of people queuing up to buy votes. And I know every police centers, every police units, security officials were deployed to every police unit across Nigeria.
Yes.
And yet, this vote buying goes on, and the security officials are there. Comrade, what is your take on this? This security personnel are supposed to be deployed to every polling unit across Nigeria.
Yes.
And yet, as you said now, there was a very organized system of vote buying, people queuing up to sell their votes,
Yeah.
and security personnel are at the polling unit. Do they require a court warrant to arrest those people involved in this?
At
kind of
all.
activities?
They wouldn't require that. But then, if you look at the context which we are talking from, the security personnel in question here are derived from the Nigerian society. And the whole thing, like Doctor said, is a systems problem. And it's all interwoven. You cannot have a Nigerian policeman, in quotes, behaving like a British police. He has found himself in a system that election have become an Obasian affair. Everybody is involved because there is money involved. I think
we should have standards, even though we are Nigerian.
yeah, even the standard which we were all supposed to be abiding by, the Constitution have been flouted. Most people don't even believe in the Constitution because even the government itself does not obey its own Constitution. There are so many people incarcerated over the past 4 or 5 years, and the court that is supposed to be an independent arm of government out of the 3 arms of government have ordered that those people are released, and the president do not assent to their release till date. So how do you think a common man will even obey the police if he's telling him something on the street?
Okay, let's come back to the election violence. Mabel, there were delays in the collation of election results in some areas due to recorded violence. Even at the polling and the collation centers, there were cases of some collation centers being invaded, and then the collation have to stop. Now, how much do you think the level of violence that we experienced during the elections contributed to the final results that was declared by INEC? Do you think the violence we experienced has any impact on the final result that was declared by INEC?
I see it as a simple man. A well-to-do and less informed person goes to a polling unit with no idea of who their candidate is and willingness to vote. But you go there and you see they are chasing people helter-skelter. Oh, the only way I can vote is if I vote for the party that these talks are proposing that I can vote. Then it will sway my idea of who I should vote, not with intelligent, knowledgeable information. And imagine even at the collation centers, some people waited till midnight or late into the night to hear their result being announced. But if you're chased from that community, or you're chased from that venue, things can happen while you're away. A lot of places where they were collecting these votes, what made some of the results very credible was everybody saw hand to hand how many votes were counted, meaning that there was a less likelihood that votes were going to be tampered with because of the presence. A lot of people even had their smartphones and were capturing this event live. So if there were any discrepancies in the result, people would have been aware, attention would have been drawn. But if you decide to chase people out of the centers and say, oh wait, later, that would affect how these results would have been tampered with. And we do know that a lot of these electoral centers were tampered with.
Okay, let me come to you, Dr. Itari. Still on the same issue, do you agree that the level of violence that was recorded during the elections impacted the final result that was declared by INEC?
Definitely it did. Apart from what she mentioned about people's opinions or people's intentions of voting being swayed already, there was a lot of recorded issues of ballot snatching, people's ballot boxes being burnt down, people being scared to even come out of their house due to violence. So if you look at it in that sense, the whole system of voting before the process even started has already been affected. Because if you are worried of coming out of your house because you heard gunshots, where we did the monitoring, one of the villages where I went to, the neighboring village, the night before, there was gunshot from 5 a.m. in the morning till about 8 a.m.
When the election was supposed to start?
When election was supposed to start. And one of the victims we visited, they came into his house and shot him point blank because he's a member of another party. So if this is your neighbor that this has happened to, and you had the intentions to vote, you had your PVC card, you had everything, you were ready, I I wouldn't come out of my house if I'm sure that I'm safe in my own home. So the whole process, you know, the violence, it really, really affects the
So,
numbers.
Conway, is it safe to say one of the reasons we still record low percentage of voters as against the PVC collected is as a result of violence?
Yes, yes, to a great extent, because you will not have a system, one, that you are not sure of the outcome and still go head on to partake in it. Then the number two is the risk factor. You cannot go to an election where you are not sure that you're going to come back with your head on your body. So it's important here to note that violence contributed in a large quantity to how the election outcome was gotten in this last election.
Okay, let's look at the EMB, the election monitoring bodies that participated in this election. Of course, chief of all is the INEC. There have been expressed doubts in supporters as to the independence of INEC at the 2019 elections. Some has argued that, INEC were not totally independent, INEC were influenced, they were influenced by Party A comes out in some state and said INEC was influenced by Party B. Another state, Party B comes out and said INEC was influenced by Party A and all of that. But looking at the role of INEC in the whole of this election, how will you assess the level of their independence? Will you say INEC acted independently and everything they did was without any kind of external influence? Let me start with the side.
I think where they lost their credibility was when the election was postponed. Because if they claim that they are independent, then if at all it's going to be postponed, people should know 2 weeks before, or at least a week beforehand. But if you're going to postpone election a couple of hours just before, then the idea of independence and credibility is already, questionable. So the whole process, I don't think is INEC body. I don't think the process was fair in general.
Miller, the postponement of the election, how will it impact on the election itself?
It did a number on the voter turnout. That I would lie about, because like we have all gone back and forth about is, if you decided to go to your villages, a lot of people traveled far and wide. A lot of people, the places they got their PVCs were not exactly the places that they lived. And if I had gone this weekend and that didn't happen, not even a day before, but into the midnight that it was announced that, it was no longer going to happen, I'm uncertain about the very next time if I would want to go to vote. Plus, when people heard about, and mind you, we've also talked about the impending idea of violence. And even with that, you're already like, okay, if this system is already shaky at this point, what would happen? The fear of the unknown made a lot of people not come out to actually go back to vote. Because it's like, okay, is something really happening? They postponed the election, what next? So the fear has started gripping people right even before, as important as elections and electing our leaders. That is not the mindset that we should start off with. We should be certain that our vote, one, was going to count. We should be certain, two, that as our votes are counting, we should be secure. Like he said, we have to know that if I leave my house to a polling center, I will have my head on my shoulder.
Okay, Conway,
Yes.
After that initial postponement of the election,
Yes.
The president of Nigeria actually came out to say he got to hear about the postponements at about 4 a.m. So after they announced by INEC. So with that, will you say INEC acted independently? How independent was INEC, particularly from the influence of the presidency and all of that, the executive or the government, in terms of doing their work? If the president himself was not even informed, according to him, about the postponement, he only got to hear it even after some Nigerians have heard about it. Yeah. Because he said it about 4 a.m. and the announcement was made about 2:45 a.m. Yeah. So how independent was it?
Well, to me, I think it's just a mere statement, because I don't believe that an INEC in Nigeria can postpone an election in Nigeria without the president of Nigeria knowing.
You're stressing Nigeria, so
Yes,
because
because the independence of INEC is still in question here. If INEC is that independent, why should they rely on government for everything they had to do during the elections? You see, there's a problem we have here. The electoral process is undergoing a macabre dance. We had
a what?
a macabre dance.
A macabre dance.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a step forward, 2 steps backward, another step forward. Like I did in my opening, 2015 elections was a step towards getting it right. But unfortunately, the things that were to be discarded in the 2015 elections reared its head, and the head have grown bigger in the 2019 elections. For example, we witnessed underage voting in 2015, and Nigerians complained. And INEC, if it was an independent body, is supposed to do things in successions, was supposed to have dealt with that aspect of elections. But unfortunately, in this last election, a lot of people, a lot of children voted in some part of the country as if it is no man's business. The social media was awash, where babies' fingers were just used to thumbprint, and nothing happened. Then you look at the other side of it. Why did we have the PVCs? Why did we have the card readers? Some places, some returning officers came and outrightly declared at the collation center that these are votes for people that used the card reader, and these are votes for people that did not use the card reader, while some regions of the country were diligent at using it. This is where a disparity has come in and put to question the credibility of the election as regards the use of the available technologies that the government have spent so much money on. Let me give you a comparative analysis here. We had an election in India recently, and you see the electoral officers walking to their polling centers with just a briefcase that holds the laptop and the equipment that will be used for the election, and you just come straight to the voting center, thumbprint and go. It will reflect at the central server directly. You don't even have time to go manipulate it because everything goes to one central server. Why can't we have such? Or why can't we make a step towards building our electoral process to achieving such feats? It's not from the sky, it's not from the moon. It is done by human beings. And as per development, I don't think India is ahead of us in terms of age of independence and our attempt to get developed. We are almost at par. But unfortunately, we are always being drawn back by our electoral processes being marred with a lot of things that are not supposed to be done. And each election has a promise of an odd. But I think if we are wise and should be true to ourselves, a maximum deviation from the current order will be the rescue mission for Nigeria.
Thank you. Dr. Tari, while Comrade was speaking now, he made mention of, he gave the example of India, electronic voting. One of the reasons we can't do electronic voting right now, as INEC has declared, is because of the position of the law. Now, prior to the election, there were efforts to amend the current electoral act so as to give room to some of those things. But the president actually didn't assent to that act because he said the time was short between the time and then the election. How crucial do you think, or what difference do you think the amended electoral act would have made to the whole process if it was signed by the president?
It would have made a whole lot of difference, although he kept emphasizing Nigeria. There is a reason why. If the leaders want the betterment of the people, they would make steps to make things better. The 2015 election set a precedence for Nigeria. For the first time, the whole world was watching in 2015 and they were expecting the country to burn down, but it didn't. We were supposed to do better in 2019. INEC had 4 years to plan for the election. 4 whole years. They could have started making these plans the year the president entered into power, and they could have used 4 years to amend the law, to do whatever they needed to do, so that that system would be in place at the time when the elections were supposed to commence. But there's a reason why this topic is coming up when it would be too late for the implementation to take place. Okay, let's put that aside. We have started counting another 4 years now. What is going to happen? What are the plans that they are making now towards, maybe an electoral voting system in the next 4 years? What are our plans to having a free and fair election in the next 4 years? What are our plans of eliminating violence in the next 4 years? Now, when it comes to the electoral voting system, I'm afraid of the issues of hacking because our politicians are very desperate. And they have used violence as a currency for elections. And violence comes with money, right? When you want to perpetrate violence, you spend money. All they need to do is repurpose that money into, outsourcing a system that would help us, break the system, unfortunately. So we have to be careful on, I don't think any of these things happening is a coincidence. We just need leaders that really want the betterment of the people.
Okay, Mabel, looking at electronic voting, if Nigeria should introduce that, how much do you think that will influence more youth participation in the electoral process in Nigeria?
First, it would give people confidence to vote, knowing that I will be able to approach a voting booth, not a person, a voting booth, and I will cast my vote. A lot of more developed or more advanced countries use the electronic voting system. Yes, there is definitely the fear of hacking, but again, like you said, since the INEC body is independent of itself, do your research. How are other countries moving forward towards achieving a truly democratic system without the entire issues? How many times in the voting process in a lot of countries have you heard serious issues about hacking and hacking these ballot boxes? Now, one good development in more recent years that Nigeria in terms of IT has come to play is the use of a BVN number. Now, I was very skeptical about how the BVN number works, so maybe if I forget my BVN number, I will go to a bank, trying to fake and get a new one, or I don't know where my last BVN number was. But one thing that was pretty consistent, they said, you have to go to the bank, you did the BVN. It was more like a centralized system. They could identify me everywhere that I had just one BVN in all my banks. I could not cheat the system. How did we achieve that?
Okay.
So with that being said, we can use that same model of self-identification once to connect our voting system as well. So I think I've even heard this suggestion a lot, especially in the tech space, especially on social media, that why must I go to only a particular place to vote? Why can't I, maybe register in my village and still be able to vote in Abuja, and it shows that it's just me. I can be able to withdraw money anywhere regardless of where I have my bank, right? So why should I not have create less system of violence? Because if I can be able to go to the nearest ATM machine near me and I will thumbprint, and then it will record my thumb and associate it with my BVN, which is just uniquely to me, meaning everybody everywhere can do it. Meaning a child that does not have a BVN because you're not 18 cannot be able to vote.
Okay, well, that's the issue of the law as it is. But during the last US election, for example, I was privy to watch some of the live recordings of the voting process. Mm-hmm. And then you see someone walking to vote, just enter the place, slot for the type, and then just put his thumbprint and he's out. In this whole thing, the period of him coming and doing casting his votes and going out was less than like 5 minutes, and the pencil was done. Yeah. Why can't we have such system in Nigeria? She raised the issue of our system could be hacked. And if you want to talk about hackers, I think if you are looking for hackers, apart from Russia, you want to look at, so you have a handful of them in the United States. So with all the hackers in the US and all of that, yet they still have this system where you can just go there, cast your vote, and walk out in 5 minutes. As you said, not you going to meet somebody, but you just going to cast your vote and go away. If the law is amended for us to have this, why can't we have this? Why is it a problem for us?
Yes. We have a problem with all this because, you see, we have made election a very beautiful scenario that everybody is in love with. Why is it so in America? It's because if you are a senator and you leave office as a senator, after 10 years, you are not even able to build your own personal house. But if you are a senator in Nigeria, in the next 2 days in the House of Reps, you are already a billionaire. So, except the attempt to reduce that excessive spending on politics is reduced and make offices more official than political, make offices more responsive to the citizen than political, make offices less paying than the hard-working jobs. Until then, I think our problem is just going to be akin to the Israelite journey. We are out of Egypt. Jerusalem is still very far.
Indeed. Okay, just before we begin to wrap up, INEC preliminary report on the reason why the River State's coalition process was halted, according to INEC, was due to the undue interference of the military in that election. And the military, the chief of army staff, had said that the military conducted themselves, according to the law. But INEC is saying, we had to halt that election process because of the military interference. What is your take on this?
Well, on this, I beg to say something here. Everything that had happened in the whole election, as regard to that, you cannot have a straight jacket facts about it, because what came out of the videos we see on social media is different from what they are telling us. We could see where the policemen and the army were confronted, were in head-on confrontation in River State. What would have led to that? It shows that there's a federal might trying to overpower a particular regional might. So until we have now scaled off all this from our politics, we'll still continue to witness it. You cannot tell me that the army conducted themselves when in some places it was even viewed that the army were part of the people that perpetrated the violence. So how is that the conduct of a federal army when they take side? It's unfortunate that this is the first time in any system or state that the military are left to stay for more than 2 years in power. And you see, Lord Acton Barron said something. He said, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now we are enjoying the absolutism of power, where people go unchecked, where people go do things as they wish because they are almighty in their own might. You can have a chief, a service chief, stay for more than 2 years in power, and you dictate to him. It means there is a nexus that have connected into the central system, which cannot be divorced. So, in that aspect, you see that the military wants to impress one party because their loyalty is subsumed to that party by virtue of appointment, by virtue of order, by virtue of governmental positions.
Dr. Terry, there were reported cases of violence across Nigeria yesterday. There were reported cases of some security officials interference in the election across Nigeria given. But it seems there were some particular level of security officials' involvement in the election in the Niger Delta states in the last elections. What could you say attributed to this?
I think I would piggyback on what he said. Unfortunately, it was obvious from the election that they were partisan. If you look at, on general terms, the whole election, there were more military personnel deployed to the south rather than the north, if we were to be plain and honest here. Because if you look at the concentration of people, another topic I wanted to bring up was population in Nigeria. When was the last time was population census taken? So how do we even verify that the numbers of the votes that came out of the north is the same, is what is reasonable to the number of votes that came out in the south? So, like I was saying, there were more military deployed to the south of Nigeria. And the south is such a small and concentrated space. When I was going through the election monitoring, every 5 minutes or 10 minutes stops you drive, you meet a military personnel. And you don't just meet a military personnel, you meet 5, 6 military personnel, including their bosses. It doesn't make sense that in a country like Nigeria, people cannot vote peacefully and they have to send military down. Other countries like the US send military to Iraq to fight wars. It means that we are dealing with a war, we are not dealing with an actual election process that is supposed to be peaceful, free, and fair. So, I mean, that question is not a question that can be directly answered in terms of exactly why military personnel were sent, to the south. Military personnel were sent all over Nigeria, but there was more in the south, and there is a reason for that.
Okay, neighbor, as we begin to wind down, we have talked about so many issues here. Violence plays a major role in the outcome of the election. But how do we begin to tackle this issue as a country? What are the things we should begin to put in place to see that this issue of electoral violence becomes not a last in the country?
I think she said it in the beginning, but just to reiterate, we have to start at the grassroots level. It's not a situation where it's the high officials that are the problem. We as a populace need to sensitize ourselves as well. We need to be able to tell this other person, your vote or how much this party is going to pay you is not enough for you to sell your vote. We need to know that even at the preliminary sessions, that we need to have people vying for this position that are credible. Because a lot of times, a lot of people just relax and they're not concerned with the process. Anybody that comes, okay, on that day, if I like, I'll go and vote. That's not the attitude. We first of all need to change our attitude towards voting, towards politics. We need to be more aware of who are coming out for my constituency, who and who is coming out for State House of Assembly or whichever section of government, and make sure that we rally around those people, scrutinize them. If there will be a fall away, if anybody will decide, okay, I want to give up now, give up. So we know that at the end of the day, the people we are voting for are the people we want to elect into power. And I also feel, I don't know if this can scale, but I also feel that there should be some sort of punishment for, let's say, vote buying, for example. A group of, why do we still allow people that we know vote buying is happening in these centers to still qualify for the process either way? Why are they still viable candidates? We have heard, we've seen reports, we said, oh, this particular party, they were buying vote, and we still go ahead to count their vote as part of credible votes. I don't think that should be, because no one is held accountable. So everybody feels, well, whatever I do at the end of the day, well, it will fly. So if there are no systems in check that defaulters are going to be measured by, clearly legal systems, it's not the one where you say you shoot on site. Okay. But clearly legal systems that will be in place to also check if you do this would be the repercussions, legally and backed by the law. Should be able to.
Okay, Dr. Tari, we want to have your last word on this. What do we do from here? How do we address the issue of violence in our elections?
Yes, education for me. We have the power as the people. The leaders is just a few at the top. If the people demand that this is what they require for people who are going to lead them, then they have the power to do that. Unfortunately, poverty is an issue that affects the decisions that the citizens make. Somebody who is not able to afford simple medical bill for their family, and you give them 15,000 naira, 50, 150,000 naira, probably an amount they've never seen in their lifetime, to perpetrate a particular act, they might be forced to do it because they are frustrated. So, you know, it is the kind of poverty that some Nigerians experience is a systematic kind of poverty that they are unable to take themselves out of. There is nobody that does not want to take themselves out of poverty. But if the poverty that they experience is systematic, then it is set to keep them there so that they would not be able to come out of it. And then when they need to be used, they will be used. So if their mentality is changed to the fact that your use is only valuable every 4 years, then maybe people's perception about how elections should be carried out will change. Because I think the whole process was sad. One of the reasons why the whole process was sad for me was because this is a digital age. There is evidence all over social media. But we put on our TVs and we hear everything on the news and it's just like a joke. Look at what's happening in Paris now with the fire going on in Notre Dame. Everybody is crying, it's all over the news, people are dying. But the election went on, people died, and there is no face to these deaths. Nobody, we don't know the names, apart from Dr. Ferry and a few other people, we don't know the names of the people that died. Children died, families, people's mothers, people's sisters, people's brothers died, people's dads died, and there is no face to the name. We've been desensitized to the effects of election in Nigeria, and it's really, really sad.
Yeah, just like a remark somebody made earlier today, that the way it is now, the level of violence going on in the country now, when we hear that there was violence in so-and-so quarters, so-and-so community, and we say, 4 lives were lost, people start saying, thank God it's just 4. It's only 4 now, because we are used to hearing a lot of numbers of people dying, and so we hear 4, we are even happy, we are celebrating the fact that it's only 4 that died. When as a matter of fact, we should be mourning if just one person died. But come with.
Yes.
We have said a lot today.
Yeah.
But let me take your thoughts now, your closing thoughts on how do we address the issue of violence in our elections in Nigeria.
First, the voting class must be liberated. Then secondly, elections should be made not just like a do-or-die affair. There should be a reduction in our love for getting it all at elections. You know, just like one of the former presidents said one time, he said, nobody's blood is what is election. Until we are able to sink down within the minds of citizens the value of their vote as part of their conscience. If your vote can be bought, it means your conscience can be bought. And until we have made offices, like I had earlier said, less lucrative, in quotes, it will still continue. The only way to do this is to be able to reduce the process from what it is now to a better process. And the better process is, one, to engage technology more. No matter how we're going to look at it, technology is going to salvage us from a very, very, very dead end in this. If not, as we are going, we are hitting a moribund state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Tari, for joining us today. Thank you, Conway, and thank you, Mayor Mabel. That has been the edition for this month on the SINGTalks Lounge. We hope you have enjoyed watching us. Subsequent editions, you will have opportunity to be part of us here, to be a member of the audience, or to be part of the panel. And so as we progress, we'll be reaching out. Just follow us on all our social media pages to get the instructions on how you can join us at the studio to be part of the program. So to come your way again next month, I want to say thank you again, Dr. Tari Tuna, for being with us today. Coming the Kwarachi Jacob, thank you very much for being with us. It was a pleasure having you with us today. Thank you very much, and then we'll see you again next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.